Going Infinite, The Rise and Fall of a New Tycoon, by Michael Lewis. Introduction. Imagine for a moment you're on a video call. A very important one. On the other side of the screen is Anna Wintour, the legendary editor of Vogue magazine, a figure so powerful she can make or break entire empires with a single nod. She's trying to recruit you for one of the most exclusive events on the planet, the Met Gala. She's talking, explaining the prestige, the glamour, the power. And you're playing a video game. You're not just glancing at it. You've minimized her face on your screen so you can fully focus on your game, a fantasy battle called Storybook Brawl. You're choosing your hero, the Horde Dragon, a personal favorite, and assembling an army of dwarves and princesses to defend it. Every so often, as Anna Wintour pauses, you unmute yourself and say, you up, or that's super interesting, before diving right back into your digital battle. This isn't a scene from a movie. This was a real moment in the life of Sam Bankman-Fried, the subject of Michael Lewis's staggering book, Going Infinite. Now, who is Michael Lewis? He's the master storyteller of our financial age, the man who took us inside the chaos of Wall Street in Liar's Poker and the 2008 crash in The Big Short. He has a rare gift for finding the characters who stand at the center of history, making moments and showing us the world through their eyes. And in Sam Bankman-Fried, he found perhaps his most complex and confounding subject yet. Going Infinite isn't just a book about the rise and fall of a crypto exchange. It's a deep, psychological portrait of a mind that operates on a completely different frequency from the rest of us. It's the story of a young man who, in just a few years, became the world's richest self-made person under 30, with a fortune once estimated at over $22 billion. He was a new kind of tycoon, one who lived in cargo shorts and slept on a beanbag chair, all while planning to give away his entire fortune to save humanity from existential risks like pandemics and rogue artificial intelligence. In this journey today, we're going to step inside that story. I'm going to share with you the key moments and hidden lessons from this incredible book. By the time we're done, you won't just understand what happened to FTX, you'll understand the mindset that made it all possible. You'll see how a unique form of genius, combined with a radical philosophy and a world desperate for a new hero, created one of the most spectacular rises and devastating falls in modern history. This is a story about ambition, morality, and the dangerous line between changing the world and breaking it. Book summary. To truly understand Sam Bankman-Fried, you have to go back to the beginning, to his childhood, which he himself found a bit confusing. He once said, "I just can't figure out what I did with it." He was the son of two brilliant Stanford law professors, Joe Bankman and Barbara Fried, who were far more interested in ideas than in money. They raised him in a world of intellectual rigor, where every assumption was questioned. This led to a profound moment for young Sam in the third grade. His classmates were talking about Santa Claus. Sam had heard of Santa, of course, but he thought of him like Bugs Bunny, a character, not a real being. When he realized that other kids genuinely believed a man with flying reindeer delivered presents down their chimneys, it blew his mind. He thought, what the fuck? Where did that come from? He comforted himself with the thought that this was just a childish delusion. Adults, surely, knew better. But then, a year later, a classmate told him he believed in God. And not just him, but his parents too. Lots of grown-ups. This sent Sam into a spiral. He thought, if hell is real, a place of eternal torment, why are we talking about anything else? Why do we care about McDonald's? This is terrifying. From these two experiences, Santa and God, Sam drew a life-altering conclusion. It was entirely possible for almost everyone in the world to be completely, self-evidently wrong about something, while he was right. He called it the reality of mass delusions. This wasn't arrogance, it was an observation. and it became a core part of his operating system. He learned that he could exist in a state where the world was wrong, he was right, and neither side had to convince the other. They could just stare at each other. This feeling of separateness defined his youth. He found it easier to talk to adults than to kids, yet he felt disconnected from everyone. He even had to teach himself how to make facial expressions, especially smiling, which he found physically difficult and strange. Why did he have to grin at someone just because they said something? Why couldn't they just say it? He was, as one classmate later put it, viewed as smart and inoffensive and maybe not all that human. And Sam didn't really disagree with that assessment. He hated school, especially classes like English. The idea of interpreting a book and being graded on that interpretation struck him as bizarre. To him, it was subjectivity framed as objectivity. He famously argued that Shakespeare couldn't possibly be the greatest writer in history based on simple Bayesian probability. What were the odds, he reasoned, that the best writer ever would be born in 1564, when only a tiny fraction of the population was literate, compared to the billions of literate people alive today? It was statistically improbable. While the rest of the world offered him nothing but boredom and irrationality, he found one exception: games. Specifically, a card game called Magic: The Gathering. This wasn't like chess, where the best move was, in theory, perfectly calculable. Magic was a game of incomplete information, probability, and constant change. The rules and cards were always shifting, forcing players to adapt on the fly. The game was, in a sense, unknowable. And Sam was brilliant at it. It was in this world of strategic uncertainty that he made his one true childhood friend, a boy named Matt Noss. His other sanctuary was math camp. For the first time, he was surrounded by kids who thought like him, who were more interested in building predictive models for elections than in expressing partisan opinions. But math camp also delivered a humbling lesson. He realized he wasn't the smartest person in the room anymore. In fact, by their standards, he was below average. This bothered him. But it also sparked a crucial insight about himself. The place I am strongest, he concluded, is the place where you have to do things other people would find shocking. He just didn't know where in the world that place existed yet. He would find it, of all places, on Wall Street. During his junior year at MIT, feeling disillusioned with academia, Sam wandered into a job fair. He saw booths for high-frequency trading firms he'd never heard of: Jane Street Capital, Susquehanna, Wolverine. He dropped off his resume, not thinking much of it. To his surprise, he got calls for interviews. The interviews were unlike anything he'd ever experienced. They weren't about his grades or his hobbies. They were games. Mental math puzzles, probability questions, and bizarre betting scenarios. For his in-person interview at Jane Street, they handed him a stack of poker chips and told him that no one who lost all their chips had ever been hired. The games were designed to test a very specific kind of thinking. They were games about games, or metagames. For instance, they gave him 10 coins, each weighted differently, and a limited number of flips to maximize his winnings. The game wasn't just about finding the best coin, it was about his relationship with information, how he sought it, how quickly he updated his beliefs, and how comfortable he was acting on partial knowledge under time pressure. For Sam, this was like a more complex, high-stakes version of Magic: The Gathering. He realized that these games were testing for something that nothing in his childhood could have prepared him for, yet his mind was perfectly suited for it. By the end of the day, he said, it was clear that it was by far the best I'd ever done at anything. He had found his place. But just as he was discovering this world of high-stakes probability, another powerful idea found him. A young Oxford philosophy lecturer named Will MacAskill reached out to him. MacAskill was a leader in a new movement called effective altruism, or EA. The idea, born from the work of philosopher Peter Singer, was simple but radical. If you saw a child drowning in a pond, you would jump in to save them, even if it meant ruining your expensive shoes. So why, Singer asked, do we not feel the same urgency to send the equivalent cost of those shoes to save a child starving in another country? Effective altruism took this idea and turned it into a quantitative framework for life. The goal was to use your time and money to do the most good possible, measured in lives saved. McCaskill presented Sam with a choice. You could become a doctor and save, say, a few dozen lives over your career. Or you could pursue a lucrative career, become an investment banker, make millions of dollars, and donate that money to fund several doctors, thereby saving many times more lives. This concept was called earning to give. For Sam, who had been raised by utilitarian parents and had long believed that a person should be judged by the consequences of their actions, this was a revelation. It was, as he said, obviously right. It gave him a clear, practical mission. He wasn't just going to be a trader at Jane Street, he was going to be an altruistic trader, a money-making machine for the good of humanity. He spent 3 years at Jane Street, honing his skills and donating most of his income to EA charities. But inside, he was deeply unhappy. I don't feel pleasure, he wrote in a private journal. I don't feel happiness. Somehow my reward system never clicked. He felt disconnected from his co-workers, wearing a social mask he had carefully constructed. They care about the Sam they see, he wrote, my real-life Twitter account. He began to question if Jane Street was truly the place where he could have the highest impact. He made a list of 10 other things he could do and calculated the expected value of each. The chance that Jane Street was the absolute best option was low. The only way to find out was to try something else. And that's when he discovered crypto. In 2017, the crypto market was exploding, going from $15 billion to over $700 billion in a single year. It was a wild, inefficient, unregulated frontier. It was the kind of market where a Jane Street-style approach could, in theory, make astronomical sums of money. Sam did a quick, back-of-the-envelope calculation. He could potentially make $1 million a day. It seemed so crazy he cut the estimate by 90%, but even then, the numbers were huge. He told his friend Adam Yedidia, I could make $1 billion. Adam replied, you're not going to make $1 billion. He quit Jane Street and, with a small group of other effective altruists, started a crypto trading firm. He called it Alameda Research. His secret weapon was his access to a pool of brilliant, mission-driven EAs who trusted each other implicitly, a crucial advantage in a world where theft was rampant. Among his first hires were 2 people who would become central to his story. Gary Wang, a coding prodigy from math camp and MIT who was so quiet people thought he couldn't speak, and Nishad Singh, his younger brother's best friend, a brilliant and deeply empathetic engineer. The early days of Alameda were pure chaos. They were exploiting huge price differences for Bitcoin between different countries, like the kimchi premium in South Korea, where Bitcoin traded for 20% to 50% more than in the US. The problem was getting money in and out of the country. Sam considered schemes involving jumbo jets filled with people carrying suitcases of cash. This chaotic environment led to a crisis. Sam's management style, or complete lack thereof, drove his team crazy. He wouldn't show up for meetings, he'd fall asleep at his desk, and he'd play video games during one-on-ones. Then, millions of dollars in a cryptocurrency called Ripple vanished. The management team panicked. Sam's attitude was, it'll probably turn up somewhere. He treated the missing money like a thought experiment he called the Bob problem. Imagine your good friend Bob is at a party where someone is murdered. There's a 1 in 20 chance Bob did it. How do you treat Bob now? You can't be certain, so you have to live with the probability. That's how he saw the missing ripple. There was an 80% chance it would turn up, so they should act as if they still had 80% of it. This probabilistic thinking, so powerful in markets, was maddening in a crisis. The entire management team, except for Sam and Gary, quit in what became known as the schism. They tried to buy him out and warned investors that he was reckless and could not be trusted. But then, something incredible happened. With no one left to stop him, Sam unleashed his automated trading system, ModelBot, and it immediately started making huge amounts of money. And the missing ripple? It turned up. It had been stuck in a technical glitch between two exchanges. Sam had been right all along. The people who stayed, Gary, Nishad, and a young trader from Jane Street named Caroline Ellison, were now bound to him. He wasn't just a leader, he was a prophet. The experience, however, changed him. He decided he needed to be less off-putting, to give people the impression he was more interested in what they were saying than he actually was. He would agree with them, even when he didn't. This was the birth of his signature up. He went from being a person you'd be surprised to learn approved of you to a person you'd be surprised to learn didn't. By 2019, the easy money in crypto trading was drying up as big firms like Jane Street entered the market. Sam needed a new plan. He decided to build his own casino, a crypto exchange. He called it FTX. The idea was to create an exchange that was better designed and more reliable than the competition, one that could appeal to professional traders. But he had a problem. He'd never done marketing, never had customers. He was an unknown. To solve this, he did something radical. He created a new crypto token, FTT, which was essentially stock in FTX. It gave holders a claim on 1/3 of the exchange's revenues. He sold a chunk of it to insiders and crypto players for pennies, raising a few $1,000,000. On July 29, 2019, FTT listed on the FTX exchange. It opened at $1 and quickly shot up to $1.50. Sam had accidentally built his house on an oil field. The timing was perfect. FTX offered crypto futures, allowing traders to make leveraged bets, which was exactly what the market wanted. And its risk management system was brilliant. Created by Gary, it liquidated losing positions instantly, preventing the socialized losses that plagued other exchanges. FTX was seen as the safe casino. One of his early big investors was a rival, Changpeng Zhao, or CZ, the CEO of the world's largest crypto exchange, Binance. CZ bought a 20% stake in FTX for $80 million. But their relationship was fraught. Sam saw CZ as obsessed with the size of his slice of the pie, while Sam was focused on the size of the whole pie. Their rivalry escalated, with Alameda traders exploiting flaws in Binance's trading bots and CZ publicly accusing FTX of being an attacker. Eventually, Sam realized he couldn't pursue his goal of becoming the world's most regulated crypto exchange while being tied to CZ, who often played fast and loose with rules. In mid-2021, Sam bought back CZ's stake. The price? $2.2 billion. With CZ out of the picture, Sam launched a massive marketing blitz to build FTX into a trusted, mainstream brand. He still had no idea how branding worked, so he just started throwing money around to see what would stick. He spent hundreds of millions on sports endorsements, the Miami Heat arena, patches on every MLB umpire's uniform, and deals with stars like Steph Curry and Shaquille O'Neal. But the endorsement that mattered more than all the others combined was Tom Brady. Sam paid Brady $55 million. He couldn't explain why, but he saw that Brady's endorsement had a mystical power that others lacked. It was another weird fact of human behavior he couldn't logically parse but had to accept. By 2021, FTX was a rocket ship. It was about to generate $1 billion in revenue. Venture capital firms were falling over themselves to invest, pouring in $2.3 billion and valuing the company at over $20 billion. Sam refused to give any of them a seat on the board or any control over the business. He was the undisputed king. He moved the entire company from Hong Kong to the Bahamas, a country that had just created crypto-friendly regulations. He bought up hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate, including a $30 million penthouse at a luxury resort called Albany, where he lived with his inner circle of EAs, Gary, Nishad, and Caroline. Behind the scenes, the lines were blurring. Legally, FTX and Alameda were separate companies. In reality, they occupied the same office, were owned by the same person, and their finances were becoming dangerously intertwined. Sam had handed over day-to-day management of Alameda to Caroline Ellison. By this time, he and Caroline were in a secret, on-again, off-again romantic relationship. Caroline was overwhelmed. She felt she wasn't suited for the job and was constantly seeking Sam's approval, both professionally and personally. She wrote him long, business-like memos detailing her romantic feelings and anxieties. "These feelings consume a ton of my brain space," she wrote in one. In another, she worried, "I did a bad job on this thing. Now Sam will hate me, sad." Sam's reply was brutally logical. In a memo titled Arguments Against, he wrote, "In a lot of ways I don't really have a soul. I don't feel happiness. What's the point in dating someone who you physically can't make happy?" This emotional turmoil was happening as Alameda was taking on enormous, hidden risks. The key to the entire disaster was an obscure account inside Alameda labeled Fiat. When FTX first started, it couldn't get its own bank account. So, customers who wanted to deposit US dollars had to wire their money to Alameda Research. This created a liability for Alameda. It owed that money back to FTX's customers. According to Sam's story, this was initially just a plumbing issue. The money sat in an Alameda bank account because there was nowhere else for it to go. But it never got properly moved or accounted for. For years, Sam claimed he didn't pay attention to it. Caroline was running Alameda, and he was busy building FTX. He felt that Alameda had infinity dollars, so an $8.8 billion liability didn't seem like something to worry about. But in the spring of 2022, the crypto market crashed. Alameda suffered huge losses. Suddenly, that $8.8 billion wasn't just a number on a spreadsheet, it was a lifeline that Alameda had been quietly using as its own capital. It had been spending FTX customer money on Sam's venture investments, political donations, and to cover its own trading losses. The whole thing came crashing down in one spectacular week in November 2022. It started with a leaked Alameda balance sheet published by the crypto news site CoinDesk. It showed that a huge portion of Alameda's assets was made up of FTT, the token Sam had created. This suggested that Alameda's financial health was deeply tied to the value of a token printed by its sister company. Seeing this, Sam's great rival, CZ, tweeted that Binance would be selling its entire $500 million position in FTT due to recent revelations. This was the spark that lit the fuse. Caroline Ellison tried to calm the market, tweeting that Alameda would happily buy all of CZ's FTT for $22 a share. But this backfired catastrophically. The market interpreted it as a sign of desperation, that Alameda needed the price to stay above $22, probably because it was using FTT as collateral for billions in loans. A panic ensued. The price of FTT collapsed. And a bank run started on FTX. Customers tried to withdraw their money, but the money wasn't there. In just a few days, customers pulled out $5 billion. FTX had a hole in its balance sheet of over $8 billion. The customer deposits that were supposed to be safe in FTX had been spent by Alameda. In a desperate, last-ditch effort, Sam called CZ and begged him to buy FTX to save it. For a brief moment, it looked like it might work. Binance signed a non-binding letter of intent. But after a day of looking at the books, CZ backed out, tweeting that the issues were beyond our control or ability to help. On November 11, 2022, Sam Bankman-Fried, the boy genius who was going to save the world, filed for bankruptcy. In the chaotic aftermath, a new CEO, a seasoned bankruptcy expert named John Ray III, took over. What he found shocked him. "Never in my career," he wrote in a court filing, "have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information. There were no proper records, no board of directors, no clear lines of authority. It was, as one FTX psychiatrist put it, a clubhouse more than a corporation." 1 month later, Sam was arrested in the Bahamas and extradited to the United States. His closest lieutenants, Caroline Ellison, Gary Wang, and Nishad Singh, all pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. The story Sam told was that it was all a tragic mistake, a massive accounting error he wasn't paying attention to. He claimed he didn't realize the scale of the risk until it was too late. But those closest to him, like Constance Wang, FTX's COO, came to believe something else. After confronting him repeatedly, she concluded, "He has absolutely zero empathy. That's what I learned that I didn't know. He can't feel anything." And yet, the final twist in this story is perhaps the most bizarre. As John Ray's team began the painstaking process of hunting down the missing money, they started finding it everywhere. Stashed in hundreds of bank accounts and crypto wallets. They recovered stakes in promising companies, like the AI firm Anthropic, that had skyrocketed in value. By mid-2023, they had recovered over $7 billion in liquid assets, with billions more in illiquid investments still to be sold. The great mystery of where did the money go had a shocking answer. Mostly, it was still there. It hadn't been lost in a single catastrophic trading loss. It had been moved, spent, and invested, but much of it was recoverable. FTX hadn't just evaporated. It had been a solvent, wildly profitable company right up until the moment a bank run, triggered by its greatest rival, exposed a fatal flaw in its foundation, a flaw that Sam Bankman-Fried, the boy who saw the world in probabilities, had either failed to see or chosen to ignore. Commentary. When you step back from the whirlwind of Michael Lewis's Going Infinite, what are we left with? It's more than just a story about crypto and finance. It's a profound and cautionary tale about the nature of genius, the seductive power of a grand purpose, and the fragility of trust. The first, and perhaps most powerful, lesson is about the blind spots that often accompany extraordinary talent. Sam Bankman-Fried's mind was, without a doubt, a rare instrument. He saw the world not as a collection of stories or emotions, but as a massive, interconnected game of probabilities. This allowed him to see opportunities in financial markets that others missed. He could calculate expected value in his head with astonishing speed and act on it without hesitation. But that same operating system that made him a brilliant trader made him a deeply flawed human being and leader. His inability to connect with or even truly register the emotional reality of others wasn't just a personality quirk, it was a catastrophic liability. He could build a complex risk engine for a financial exchange, but he couldn't build a simple organization chart because he couldn't grasp the basic human need for structure and clarity. He could justify any action with a utilitarian calculation, but he couldn't see the profound damage he was causing to the people who trusted him most. The story is a stark reminder that intelligence is not the same as wisdom. You can have a brilliant mind for solving puzzles, but a complete inability to navigate the complexities of human relationships, ethics, and responsibility. And in the real world, the latter is what ultimately holds everything together. The second major theme is the intoxicating danger of a righteous mission. Effective altruism gave Sam and his inner circle something more powerful than money: a purpose. They weren't just traders getting rich, they were soldiers in a war to save humanity. This belief that they were doing good on a cosmic scale became a moral license. It allowed them to justify cutting corners, ignoring rules, and taking monumental risks. After all, if you believe you're on a mission to prevent the apocalypse, what's a little regulatory arbitrage or a few $1 billion of customer funds used as a line of credit? The goal is so noble, so vast, that the means begin to feel insignificant. This is a trap that has snared countless idealists throughout history. When your mission is to go infinite, the small, finite rules of the here and now can start to seem trivial. The book serves as a powerful warning against the belief that a good intention is a substitute for good character. Finally, the story of FTX is a modern fable about the nature of value itself. In a world of dizzying complexity, what do we choose to believe in? For a few years, the world chose to believe in Sam Bankman-Fried. Venture capitalists, politicians, celebrities, and millions of ordinary people projected their hopes onto this quirky, brilliant young man in cargo shorts. He seemed like something new, something different, an answer to the greed and cynicism of the old financial world. His very oddness, his lack of interest in the trappings of wealth, became his greatest asset. It made him seem authentic. But as Michael Lewis shows us, that trust was built on a story, not on substance. The entire edifice, from the celebrity endorsements to the venture capital valuations, was a shared belief system that shattered in an instant. It reminds us that in finance, and perhaps in life, value is often a consensus hallucination. It's real only as long as we all agree to believe it's real. And when that belief vanishes, it can take everything down with it. So, what can you, a young person full of ambition, take from this? First, cultivate self-awareness as much as you cultivate skill. Understand your own blind spots, especially if you're gifted in a particular area. The things you're worst at are often the things that will cause you the most trouble. Second, be wary of any mission, no matter how noble, that encourages you to believe you are above the rules that govern everyone else. Character, integrity, and simple human decency are not negotiable, no matter how high the stakes. And finally, learn to distinguish between a compelling story and a solid foundation. The world is full of charismatic storytellers, but real, enduring value is built on something far more tangible: trust, transparency, and a healthy respect for risk. Sam Bankman-Fried wanted to go infinite, but he forgot that we all live in a finite world, governed by finite rules and the simple, unbreakable bonds of human trust. That was a summary of Going Infinite by Michael Lewis. We've touched on the major themes and the unbelievable narrative today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic of a Michael Lewis book happens when you read it yourself. It's in the quiet moments, when a particular story or a simple phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect, that the deepest understanding comes. This summary is designed to give you a map of the territory and help you decide if this journey is one you want to take. If anything we've talked about today has sparked your curiosity or resonated with you, I truly encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning what happened, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you think about genius, ambition, and the world we live in. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you something to think about, I'd be grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.